everyone, and welcome to a special edition of TED Excellence, the show in which I find out how to be a teacher in a school where the skin colors are too monochromatic, I guess. And I come to you live from my Corona bunker on the moon with Dogcat Fox, a Pepperjack, and all of you. Hello, everyone. Welcome to a special Friday night episode of TED Excellence, or what I'd like to call in this case a TEDXtra, a phrase I'm sure has never been used before in the history of histories. Yes, because Satsu, my co-host for the Lords of the Night, is taking another night to recuperate from his recent visit to the hospital. I decided that it would be inappropriate to try to do another solo Lords of the Night. We need to have at least Satsu around. One of us. Both of us have to be there, and I just figured it wasn't quite right to do it again. So I decided instead to give you a TED educator talk that is hot off the presses. This one was posted just today, and as soon as I saw the title, I knew I would have to cover it at some point. Because we're going to learn today about how to be an anti-racist teacher in a mostly white school. I'd like you to ponder that title for a moment as I go over some hellos before we begin. Jaeger Pony, hello. Mike R, hello. Jen T, Maxie, hello. Swirl Blue, hello. The Redneck Ram, hello. Keever Dam, hello. Who else is here? The Redneck Ram. Jamie Melquist, hello. Mr. E, hello. Everybody's arriving just now. And then chat jump, because of course it does. Portmanteau, hello. Brittany Holland, hello. Mike R, hello. Troy L, hello. Deco, hello. Yoshi the Macabre, hello. Harvos Marvos, hello. Daniel Fullman, hello. Jonathan Peterson, hello. Charms 2, hello. Shio Gorath, hello. Green Death, hello. I think I got everyone. If I missed you, I do apologize. But my aim was off. Yeah, so how do you act as an anti-racist teacher in a mostly white school? How do you not be racist when focusing so explicitly on the racial makeup of your school? I don't know. I have no idea, but I am very excited to find out. So let's proceed. First and foremost, I did not hold a poll for using a TEDx bingo card on this one. I just decided to choose one myself for once, since this is a special edition. And admittedly, this TED Ed talk is relatively short, coming in at just under 9 minutes. So we're not looking at a long haul here. But the bingo card I have chosen is B. B as in book. There are books in schools, last I checked. So yes, bingo card B. You can find links to the bingo cards in the description below. So get your bingo card ready and follow along with me. Will we hit a bingo inside of a 9-minute talk? I don't know, but we'll find out. Now, as far as I can tell from what little prep I did on this, there's not much to watch in as far as video. This is mostly audio and title cards, I think. So visually, it's not going to be that exciting, but then it really is about the content and not necessarily the window dressing, isn't it? So with all that being said, I'll start off with a few seconds for sound test. You guys tell me if you can hear this, and then we will begin.
Think for yourself. The teacher might be wrong.
Think for yourself. The teacher might be wrong. Taryn Coe. All right. Well, not necessarily bad advice. Think for yourself. All right. I can appreciate that. I try to do that every day. Let's see. Sounds good, says Attack Alpaca. Twisted Skipster says hello. Hello, Twisted Skipster. Advocatus Diaboli, hello. The Malevolent Rider, hello. Anybody else here that I haven't already got? Nothing to see here, hello. So, yes. All right. So, everybody can hear it. Think for yourself. The teacher might be wrong. All right. With that in mind, let's go.
As a little girl, these are the 8 words I saw placed prominently above the chalkboard in my mother's classroom.
Uh-huh.
I knew even then that I wanted to follow in my mom's footsteps and become a public high school teacher.
Well, now, the one thing I appreciate about this is that it's got subtitles. So that even if the audio might be a little wonky in places, since it sounds like she's recording off of a webcam, at least we'll know what she's saying. Okay.
Years later, in 2004, when I was setting up my first classroom at the Seattle High School where I currently teach, I chose to display those same words.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that I wanted my classroom to be a space where students felt valued, where they realized that their ideas were just as important as mine.
But in what way are you valuing them, given the title of this talk? What counts as a value factor in your world is my primary question.
The school at which I teach is the widest public high school in the city of Seattle,
Well, that almost answers my question, I think.
with 75% of its students identifying as Caucasian.
Could they identify as anything else? And if they did, would you accept it?
I remember my mom talking about the challenges of incorporating anti-racist practices at the high school where she taught.
Oh, your mother tried to incorporate anti-racist practices into the high school where she taught. Okay. I'm already cringing inside. Do tell.
With a mostly white student body and almost entirely white staff, it was easy for many of the teachers and students at the school to see racism as someone else's problem.
So it was then your mother's job, and I assume your job then, to make racism their problem, because not having racism as a problem is bad? And why is racism something that just can't exist when there are white people around? Is it your job to introduce it?
I had become convinced that it is especially important for white educators in majority white schools to ensure that their students and colleagues are educated about racism. Because we as white people are not experiencing the pervasive daily racism that people of color experience.
Oh, okay. So the solution to that is to make white people focus inordinately on their own race and the race of others, and that will defeat racism. Or am I missing something?
This is compounded by the fact that white students who grow up living in mostly white neighborhoods and attending mostly white schools often have very little direct contact with people of color.
Yes, white people cannot understand the concept of racism because they're not around people who aren't white. They are incapable of understanding what racism is, what it does, how it works, because they're just not around people who don't look like them. Which means that there are so many civilizations on this planet that have no idea how racism works, because the countries that they live in just happen to have a whole bunch of people that all look the same. As we know, because that's how thinking works. Thank you, Lady Gopher, for the smiley, happy Dog Cat Fox. Oh, Dog Cat Fox. Wowie, wow, wow. Dog Cat Fox says hello, I think. All right, tell me more about what white people just can't understand until you educate them about how they need to think about race a lot more.
This means that unless their parents and teachers actively choose to discuss race and racism with the young people in their lives, our students will grow up with a woefully incomplete understanding of race and racism.
Oh, okay. Well, what is a complete and healthy understanding of race and racism? Do tell.
This leads to a lack of knowledge about the profound impact that race has on the power structures in our country, and a lack of understanding as to how people of different races are treated in our country.
Okay. So now she hasn't said it yet. Oh, somebody's revving their engine. Okay, someone really wanted to make me hear their engine just then. Sorry about that, live TV. So it is important that all the children in your school who are white, by the way, because if they're not white, they are not subject to this special education, obviously. You know, you can tell just by looking at them that they are not in need of such attention. Right. Okay. And white people obviously cannot understand a concept if they have not yet experienced it themselves. Right. So, war or hunger or I don't know, fear or pain or whatever. Right? Have no idea. Can't comprehend it unless they experience it in some way. Okay.
It is our job as educators, especially white educators in majority white schools, to ensure that our students have the opportunity to learn about how and why racism is still a problem, so that they can be part of working toward a more just society.
It is your job as an educator. Really? That is your job as an educator? Especially white educators. Because white educators must be assumed first and foremost to be deficient in their teaching abilities for some reason, because they're white, obviously. And in this way, we shall reduce racism and racial division in education. Okay.
Especially in a majority white school, students and teachers of color should not be expected to educate white students or white teachers about racism.
Oh, okay. Okay. So the people who actually, by your own estimate, inherently know what racism is and know how racism works can't be expected to teach anyone else how racism works. Only white teachers who don't know how racism works because they're white, only they are capable, or only they should bear the burden of teaching white students how racism works, because white students don't know how racism works, because the white teachers now know how racism works, because they've decided they know how racism works, even though they're white. And even in the presence of people who already know how racism works because of their skin color, they're going to presume to know how best to teach about race and racism to white students, even though they don't know how racism works. Have I gotten all that? Maybe? Kinda? Sorta? Thank you, Point Curation. Peacefully gay. Whoa, what? Not IRL and not in Minecraft. Yay or nay? I don't know what else to do but post art in public, not by spray paint, but stapling complete art. Well, I am definitely not in a position to give you legal advice. I don't know, Point. I mean, people leaving, like, I don't know, flyers for concerts and things in places is a form of posting art, I suppose, or stapling art. So I suppose that within the realm of that, you're in safe territory. But I don't know. So yeah, don't spray paint, don't tag stuff, but put something up that conceivably could be removed if somebody doesn't want it there, I guess. If you do it at all. But either way, thank you for the donation. All right. Well, yes. Anyway, yeah, sorry. White teachers, their job as educators is to do this, right?
I've worked with students and teachers of color who feel like they are expected to be experts on race and racism.
Well, you just told us that they are. I mean, you just told us that white people have no idea how it works. So shouldn't people who aren't white be the experts? Wouldn't they be the kinds of people you'd want to consult with if you're going to start learning about how racism really works? Or did I miss something about your education?
Or to be leading the fight against racism in their schools. If and when the topic of racism comes up in a classroom where there are few students of color, well-intentioned white teachers sometimes make these students the focus of the discussion.
Well, when you've classified white students as being inherently ignorant and incapable of understanding what race and racism is, and then by process of elimination saying that anyone who is not white already is aware and is an expert and is far more educated about the subject than any white person could be, I'm not quite sure where you would go to find a legitimate source of information on the subject if you or your students are yourselves white. So I don't know. Point curation, thank you again. They're banning online hate speech. I am pretty sure I am not safe. Art becoming increasingly political, like saying CRT is genocidal. Well, look, if you've got a message you want to get out there and you're doing it peacefully and you're not hurting anybody, you know, I don't know how it works in Canada. Canada's a different animal right now, and I wouldn't know what to say about that. In a perfect world, if you're expressing yourself peacefully, you're not hurting anybody, you're not treading on anybody's private property, you're doing anything, etc., there shouldn't be an issue, ideally. But these days, and depending on the country you're in, I don't know. So the only advice I can give is to just, you know, check ahead of time and be careful about how you're going to express yourself. Because who knows? Depends on who's going to do what on the reaction of what you're doing. Either way, just be careful, one way or the other. That's all I can say. Thank you again, though. All right, so you don't want to make the students of color, and I still hate using that phrase because it harkens back to a very bygone, I thought, era in our country, the focus of the discussion, but you've already zeroed out white people as having any knowledge of the subject. So what do you do?
Share your experience with us so that we can understand, rather than expecting white students to do the hard work of acknowledging and understanding how white people benefit from systemic racism in our country.
Well, aren't they the worst witnesses to understand that? How could a white person within the process and system of white supremacy or systemic racism, how could they possibly understand it in a way that matters? I mean, they're within it. How can they see it? So if you're a white educator trying to educate white students about systemic racism, aren't you already a faulty witness yourself based on your skin color? So, okay, well, then I guess my question is, where does the inherently ignorant and incapable of independent thought white person go to learn about systemic racism? Where do you go to do the hard work? Who do you go to learn about systemic racism? What would your advice be to someone wondering how to perfect their thought process on things? And thank you again, point curation. With First Amendment, Americans have it easy, LOL. Well, depends on the circumstances, depends on the situation. But I will say, in general, given what I'm seeing in Canada, in Scotland, in Britain in general, the UK, and other places, as imperfect a country as we are, I will definitely take our First Amendment over whatever else other countries offer most of the time, any day of the week. But then again, I might be biased. Thank you, point. All right, so yeah, what hard work do the students need to do to understand how they're inherently benefiting from an evil system that they are inexorably a part of because of the way they look?
I've talked with students of color who already feel isolated and misunderstood in majority white schools. These feelings are compounded when these students are expected to lead the way for their white peers.
Lead the way for their white peers. Imagine if you didn't make race an issue at all in school. Imagine if you just treated students equally as a matter of course and didn't focus on race at all. No, but you're determined to focus on race. In fact, you're determined to evaluate people and their ability to think or imagine or empathize with their skin color. You're the one doing that. Do you see this?
We as white teachers need to be proactive about ensuring we have created an environment where students of color feel safe, respected, and included, rather than spotlighted or isolated.
By immediately assuming that because they're not white, they need special attention, that they are more fragile, that you need to take special care with them because you're white and they're not. Do you see where this is leading? Do you see where this kind of thinking and evaluating people on the basis of race is leading you? Because I see it. I'm not sure you do. In fact, I'm 100% positive you do. You don't, I should say. Or you do, but you just don't want to admit it.
Along the same lines, we as white educators should work to ensure that we are not expecting our colleagues of color to shoulder the burden of anti-racist work while shying away from the work ourselves.
The work. Nothing like the work to get one's quasi-religious juices flowing.
I try to remind myself that it's okay to be uncomfortable. And I acknowledge that there are times where I will say or do the wrong thing when I'm discussing racism with students.
Do you mean a microaggression? I haven't actually looked at the bingo card this whole time. Let me check it out real quick just for a review. Anecdote that probably never happened. She hasn't really offered a direct anecdote yet. It's been a bunch of generalizations. Self-vilification or wretchedness. Oh, yeah. She is a white educator, so already she is inherently flawed and needs to work, and et cetera, et cetera. So circling that one, and thus circling free space as well. Systemic institutional. She talked about systemic racism. Weightless example. She hasn't really given an example yet. We're still talking in generalities. Word salad. I've understood what she said so far. It hasn't come across as babble. Leaves out vital context. She hasn't told a story really, or not yet. Collectivizes own demographic. Yeah, we as white educators. Yes. Okay. Circling that one. White supremacy. It is decidedly implied, if not explicitly stated. A list. Has she given us a list yet? I don't think so. Privilege. She hasn't said the word yet, but we may get it on aggregate by the end of this. Equity. Has she said equity? I don't think so. Plays victim. She hasn't played the victim yet. She's played the victimizer, but not the victim. Attempt to coin new buzzword, buzz phrase. No. Wage gap. No. Patriarchy. No. Feminism. No. Mind reading assumes motives. Oh, yeah. Right there. We as white educators and people of color and so on and so forth. Diversity and inclusion. No, not explicitly. Marginalization. At least by description and implication about, students of color in the school feeling isolated, etc. Make something about race, sex, etc. for no reason. Okay, that's going to be a tough one to call because this entire talk is about race, so there is a reason for it. So we don't have any non sequiturs yet. That's the thing to watch out for. Childhood or family anecdote. She talked about her mother and her mother's classroom and so on, so circle in that one. Contradicts own point or argument. I'm not quite sure what her point or argument is yet, except to say that white educators are lacking and need to do the work. If that's her point, she hasn't contradicted herself yet, as far as I can tell. Benevolent condescension. Oh, yeah. She's talking down to all those stupid white people, just don't know the real truth. And lastly, on microaggressions and conscious bias. She hasn't said it explicitly yet. She's kind of alluded to it here, but I'm going to give her some more time. So holy cow, I'm actually kind of surprised. Only 3 minutes in, we got a whole bunch of stuff circled. So for reference, on the B bingo card, self-vilification, wretchedness, systemic institutional, collectivizes own demographic, white supremacy, free space, mind reading assumes motives, marginalization, childhood or family anecdote, and benevolent condescension. If she contradicts her own point or argument in the near future, we'll have a bingo. But we're not there yet. So all that being said, let us continue.
The important thing is that I'm willing to own my mistakes, and I'm committed to learning and growing from these mistakes so that I can do better next time.
So if you commit a microaggression, you're what? Pre-forgiving yourself? Because I've heard that once you've done those things, you really can't take them back.
In these instances, I'm reminded of Holocaust survivor Elie Wiesel's words regarding neutrality and oppression. He says, "We must always take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented.
But you are the oppressor, inherently. So you're taking the side. Okay, and this whole thing kind of edges on my mind as heading towards Godwin's law, invoking the Holocaust in your own plight as facing the burden of being a white educator in a mostly white school. It's not exactly like using some kind of Holocaust metaphor, but it...
If I, as a white educator, remain neutral about racism...
No, you're not neutral about racism. You are decidedly not neutral about racism. I will grant you that. You have taken a side. You have decidedly taken a side. I'll extend you that credit.
I am not remaining neutral at all.
Mm-hmm.
My silence is helping to perpetuate racism.
Okay. You're perpetuating racism. What you propose, the way you propose it, the stereotypes you've applied to people on the basis of their race, the expectations that you have of people based on their race, the sensitivities you attribute to people based on their race, you are perpetuating racism. I do not understand how you are incapable of seeing this yourself. I really don't understand that. You're a grown, intelligent person. But somehow, this is why educators such as these really disturb me, because, the road to hell is paved in good intentions. I don't necessarily think our teacher is a bad person. In fact, on the scale of bad people in history, I'm pretty sure she is millennium down the end of the line kind of thing. You know what I mean? All the same, why is she perpetuating racist stereotypes? Because they're the benevolent kind of racist stereotypes in her mind?
Next, I'd like to share some concrete steps I've taken in my own life to become a more actively anti-racist educator.
All right. Examples and concrete steps. I'm so there. Let's get away from all these generalities. Let's talk about specifics.
I started by doing some work to learn more about the history of racism in our country and to understand more about my own identity and privilege as a white person.
Oh, privilege. All right. Privilege is on the board. Let's do that one. And I might be circling a list because she's going to go down some concrete steps. Okay. So again, you've attributed a quality of life and a quality of thinking to skin color. And you are anti-racist.
This included attending lecture series about the history of racism at a local university and reading widely from leaders in the field of race and equity work.
Equity is on the board. Leaders in race and equity work. Okay. Did you take the time to read or listen to any counterpoints to these ideas? For a more balanced perspective on everything? Just curious.
I started a book group with other educators and a discussion group with other parents who were interested in learning more about race and racism. For me, it helped to do this initial work in spaces that were distinct from my school life. I was still able to talk about how and why this learning was important for my growth as a teacher, but it also encouraged me to think about how and why this learning was important for my growth as a parent and a human being.
It's important for your growth as a human being to focus on the identity of skin color. Yes, racial identitarianism, as we all know, is a great thing to introduce into society.
This has allowed the anti-racist work I do as a teacher to be more authentic because it's grounded in how I see my purpose in the greater world.
Oh, your purpose in the greater world. So your purpose has to become your mission and agenda as an educator. Okay.
As an English language arts teacher,
Oh, no, not an English teacher. Oh, no. Especially when you're saying anti-racist, which as a process just completely perpetuates racism. Definitions of words are important.
I had long been a proponent of teaching a diverse set of texts.
Uh-huh.
But I now knew that teaching diverse authors alone is not anti-racist.
Oh, okay. Well, we have diverse or diversity and inclusion, so I'm going to circle that one. All right. Gosh, I'm honestly surprised. I'm impressed so far. This relatively short TED talk of a kind is really filling out the bingo card. No bingos yet, but we're close.
I needed to go a step further and make my teaching about race more explicitly.
Oh, good.
To this end, I crafted a new unit called Race in America around 3 core texts that I was already teaching.
Okay.
Monster by Walter Dean Myers, The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian by Sherman Alexie, and American-Born Chinese by Jean Luen Yang.
Oh, what's his name? Alexie. I did there was a TED talk I did with him. Well, not with him, but he was the subject. Yeah, he was, if I'm, okay, hold on. I don't want to tell stories out of school, no pun intended. I think it was him, but I'm going to refrain from going further because I could be wrong. I think there was a TEDx in the recent past, relatively, that had him in it, but I could be mistaken. So instead of going off and being wrong, I'll just let it sit. And if I can find it, I'll post it on Twitter. But anyway, she gave us a book list, circling a list on the card. Okay, so you had these 3 books by, I'm assuming, non-white authors, right? Okay. And of course, you couldn't just teach diversity by teaching diverse authors with their books. Okay, so then what?
Each of these novels features a teenage protagonist of color and is written by an author of color, which provides a clear entry point for students to begin exploring issues of race and racism.
Right, because as we know, you're only able to effectively and authentically write a story about characters who share your same skin color. There's no evidence at all that anyone could write a story where the protagonist doesn't happen to look like them and have it be an authentic representation of such a person. Right? I mean, that's the implication you're giving us here. Is that the implication you're giving your students as well?
I asked students to track the character development of their novel's protagonist, especially with regard to how the character's racial identity impacts their development.
Racial identity. Racial identity.
We supplement students' reading of these novels with a wide variety of shorter texts that explore issues of race and racism, and students draw connections between the experiences of the novel's protagonists and the issues that emerge in the supplemental texts, such as white privilege, white supremacy, implicit bias, microaggressions.
Microaggressions, uh-oh. Microaggressions is on the board. Oh boy, guys, we are so close to so many bingos right now. Oh my gosh. Okay. So you as an English and language arts teacher have taken it upon yourself to become a race and racism teacher. Right? You're using the mechanisms of English and language arts to push a socio-political agenda that you find important. You work at a public school again, right? Or did I miss that part?
Since starting this unit, I've expanded the core novel options to include texts by female authors of color, featuring female protagonists of color. This Side of Home by Renee Watson and The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. In the case of The Hate You Give, students were the driving force behind the addition of this text.
Yeah. Okay. So what, that lets you off the hook of being responsible for the curriculum that you're imparting upon the students? Or what? I'm not quite sure. Thank you, Pecoraro, the Driving Ape Man, for the drooling face, because yeah, that's kind of what my brain is doing right now. Thank you, Pecoraro. Okay, so the students wanted this book. Okay, and
This provided students with a concrete way for them to work on turning their study of race and racism into action.
Oh, into action, right. So now we're not just talking about educating, we're talking about activism, because it's the job of the educator to use the disciplines of education to impart and promote a social ideology of racial identitarianism onto your students, and then have them go further by taking action based on that philosophy. Okay?
It's important that students are provided with an opportunity to take meaningful steps toward fighting racism, as learning about racism can sometimes leave students feeling hopeless or overwhelmed.
Yeah, hopeless as in, gosh, I'll never be able to get rid of the color of my skin. I am doomed forever to experience the fill in the blank, depending on what stereotype you're applying to your particular student based on their skin color, since you are divvying your students up by skin color. Yeah, gosh, it's tough to not feel hopeless or overwhelmed when you have an authority figure in your life telling you that you are stained in one form or another. I can empathize.
Helping students to see their own power and encouraging them to recognize their ability to make a positive difference in the world can alleviate some of the cynicism and frustration students feel as they deepen their understanding of the long history of institutional racism and white supremacy in our country.
Our students, I'll say specifically white students, since that's the problem area here, are white students incapable of making positive change in the world without focusing on skin color? I mean, do you have to have a lens of race over everything that you do in order to make it a positive action? Is it a positive action to look at the world and the actions that you take on the basis of race?
This brings me to my final recommendation about anti-racist work in education, and it also brings me back to where this talk began, the most important expectation in my classroom. Think for yourself. The teacher might be wrong.
Okay, so how do you impart doubt about your own legitimacy on this subject to your students? I mean, if you're at least giving an escape hatch to them intellectually to all of this, I'll extend a little bit of credit, but not much, since you've already told us that this is your job as an educator.
This idea is especially important as a white teacher doing anti-racist work in a predominantly white school.
Are they supposed to? Please tell me that is the lesson you are about to tell us. Please.
Students, especially students of color, need to feel safe calling me out when I make mistakes. They need to know that they can hold me accountable and point out to me when the impact of my behavior is harmful. It is also critical that we as teachers invite students to be active participants in our anti-racist work. Student learning should not be confined to the classroom.
There's a single word and or concept that has not at all been mentioned yet in this entire talk. Now, those of you that have watched many TEDx talks with me that deal with education might know what word, or let's say institution, I'm thinking of right now. Gold star for your forehead if you guess what it is by the time I'm done with this.
Students need to be provided the opportunity to take an active role in anti-racist activism in their school and in the greater community. I hope that you will consider the ways in which you can continue to deepen and expand anti-racist teaching in your own practice. Doing so is not easy, and we will make mistakes along the way. But if we remain silent in the face of racism, we are complicit in perpetuating a system that is harmful to our students. As Elie Wiesel said, we must always take sides. Given the choice, let us take the side of truth. Let us take the side of inclusion. Let us take the side of justice. because equity matters.
That is some disturbing stuff right there. Gotta say. Of course, as with most teachers who push this kind of thinking and then come away acting as though they've done something very noble, when they really haven't. At least in my opinion. All right, well, let's go to the bingo card. See where we are at. This is where I am at present. I'll make sure that's all up to date. Yep. All right, so I'm going to go over the bingo card one more time, and then I'll go to the chat, and if you have arguments for squares yet to be circled, I will entertain those then. But real quick, could anybody think of the word or concept that should be very important to this discussion of education, so on, and children, that she did not bring up? First person in the chat that I see that says the magical word or concept, I guess I should say, I will highlight and give you a round of applause. I'm going to watch it here. Nope, not seeing it so far. Think about education and I don't know, what kids do outside of school and how they learn about things. Oh my gosh! Parents, yes! The parents, because teachers aren't teachers anymore. They're not educators, they are gurus. Who needs the parents? In fact, we need to keep the parents away from the process. Otherwise, they might interfere with the guru's work. Good job. All right. Thank you so much. All right, back to the card. Let's take a look one more time. Anecdote that probably never happened. She never really gave us an anecdote, not a direct one anyway. The closest we got was the kids chose this book. And there's not enough there for me to say whether or not that is a too good to be true kind of thing. I could see it because I've heard of that book. It's not exactly an unknown book. So if the kids wanted to read it or they were given the option to, I could see them choosing it off a list. Sure, okay. Weightless example. Example of what? I mean, I guess the think for yourself thing. I don't know if that's an example, though. Is that an example? I might need some help with that one. My mind's a little cloudy right now on examples. Thank you, Portmanteau. I second merging diversity, inclusion, and equity. I will be, yes. Just for those of you that don't know, in the near future, I'll be merging diversity, equity, and inclusion into one square. And the blank square is currently the subject of a question I put up on Twitter in a thread yesterday, asking for ideas of what to put into the square. I have a pretty good idea of what I'm going to do, but I am totally open to more suggestions. You might need to scroll down a little bit on there to see the question, but it's on my Twitter feed. Link to that is in, the description. So thank you, Portmanteau, and I will be doing that in the near future. Hopefully before next week, if I get around to it. Let's see. Weightless example. Not sure. Word salad. No, I'll give her credit. I understood everything she was saying. Nothing came out as absolute nonsensical babble. It might not have made sense on a logical, intellectual level in a way, but it wasn't babble. Leaves out vital context. Okay. She's spoken such generalities about everything. Did I ever feel at a point where she left anything out? Because she wasn't. The closest I can come to is maybe what does she mean by activism? Like what tasks or outside of the school stuff was she advocating for? That's the closest I can come to, and I'm still iffy on that. So I'm going to leave that there. I will entertain arguments elsewise in a moment. Thank you, point curation again. SJW, merge, diversity, equity, inclusion. DI, yeah. Yeah, well, actually, right now, it's they're trying to make it into justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. Jedi. Even in Star Wars, they won't let alone in this kind of terminology. So, yeah. Yeah, but DEI, it used to be D ampersand I, D and I, because diversity and inclusion. Then they changed it to DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. Now they're trying to add J at the front. So, not happy about that personally. Let's see, moving on, plays victim. Not, like I said, I never got the sense she was playing the victim. She had condemned herself as an inherent victimizer, but I don't know that she's playing the victim. Attempt to coin new buzzword, buzz phrase. I didn't hear anything new there. Wage gap. She never talked about finances. Patriarchy. No, but feminism. She did talk about specifically bringing up books by women of color and explicitly about protagonists who themselves were female. So I will circle that one, if implication by nothing else. Make something about race, sex, etc. for no reason. Again, that last caveat is the problem. Was anything in here a non sequitur to the content or theme of the presentation? No. So for no reason, that's always about that part. It has to be something brought in out of left field that has nothing to do with the rest of the talk, and she didn't do that. Contradicts own point or argument. Hold on a second here while I think about that one. Thank you again, point. Justice and equity are mutually exclusive. Well, the way that they are being defined today, yes. By definition, equity implies a kind of justice. Getting into some semantics there, but it all depends on context. It all depends on context. Those two could be relative synonyms, but as they are used these days by activists, they are concepts way out the window from what they mean. Okay, contradicts own point or argument. Think for yourself. Don't trust the teacher. At any point, did I feel as though she was actually promoting students to think for themselves when she had taken it upon herself to tell the students the correct way to think? No. Or I should say, well, let me simplify it. Her promoting critical thinking and then telling us the correct way to think because it was her mission that she was imparting into her classroom using English and language arts to push an agenda that she totally believes first and foremost is the correct way to think. Yeah. Yeah, no, you don't get away with that one.
Ooh, that's a bingo.
Right?
Yeah!
We have a bingo. Our first bingo, maybe not our last. So that is where the bingo card is for me at present, folks. If you have squares you think should be circled, please put your arguments into the chat now. Tag me in your comment for your argument so that I can make it out compared to other chats. And then I will entertain arguments for other squares to be circled. If it is the last square before a bingo, just be aware, I am going to hold a very high bar to convince me. You know, if I end up on the fence, I may leave it up to chat to give me a straw poll, but otherwise, that is the challenge. Mike R says, Scribelight, she hasn't told us how her teachings are racist, leaves out vital context. Ha! Ha! Well, no, her own blindness to what she's doing is not leaving out vital context. That's just, no. Sorry. Nice try, Mike. Nice try. Kieverdam, she said white supremacy. Yes, she did, and white supremacy has already been circled. I circled that, I think, a while back. So, yes, we're already there. Let's see. We might have hit a wall. I'll give another second here for any other arguments to be made. Just a programming note. Satsu and I should be back on schedule come Monday, barring him having more medical issues or something else. In any case, I am going. If Squishy says Satsu needs to rest, I am going to err on the side of Dr. Squishy and encourage Satsu to rest. But we will see how things go by Monday. Hopefully, over the weekend, he'll have an opportunity to rest up and he'll feel better come Monday. But just keep tuned on Twitter, both mine and at Fam2cents, for any notifications otherwise. Let's see. Charms 2. Scribelight, if she does not really want students to think for themselves, isn't the anecdote about her mother a weightless example? I hesitate only because using the same thing for two different squares always makes me pause. Like doubling up without just cause, so to say. Maybe. Tell you what. Okay, quick straw poll on that one. Even though it doesn't lead to a bingo, I understand. My hesitation has to do with doubling up on one element of the talk equating to two different squares. Does her mother's lesson qualify as a weightless example towards the talk beyond simply being a contradiction of her argument? If you think it does, as in I should circle weightless example, put a 1 in the chat. If you don't think it does, put a 2. So, and don't double vote. You get 1 vote. I trust you guys on the honor system not to confuse me. I'm already confused enough by watching these things. So I see a 1. A 1. 1-1. Well, if it's 1-1, I don't know if that's enough to tip the balance. I see another 1. I see another 1. Okay, so I got 3 1s so far. In this case, the chat on StreamYard is actually faster than the chat on YouTube. Scanner Daphne says 2. Doubling up makes it too easy to squeeze out bingos. That's also, yeah, there's also the precedent to think about here. 1, says Redneck Ram. 1, says Portmanteau. Okay, I'll tell you what. In this case, I guess we can classify the lesson from her mother in and of itself as an example weightless to the overall. Because there's the thing, and then there's the story about the thing. And since it doesn't actually make a bingo, I'll be a little lenient this time. Okay? So, just a little bit. I don't want to make it a habit. A little bit. Okay. So thank you, Charms 2. Let's see. Any other arguments for squares to be circled, guys? I'm not feeling anecdote that probably never happened. She didn't give us enough specifics or information. And I'm also not feeling make something about race, sex, etc. for no reason, or word salad. So the only one left that really works for a bingo would be attempt to coin new buzzword, buzz phrase, and as far as I can tell, nothing in there was new. None of it was innovative or something I like to call, etc. So I think we might be at the end of the road. I will give it until the... I'll give it another minute or two. If you have anything else, it'll have to be good. Beyond this, let's see. What else is going on? Well, I'll do all the programming notes at the very end. Not seeing much activity in the chat, so all right. In case somebody's crafting a well-organized argument, I'll give it another 30 seconds, and then we're going to call it. But just as a wrap-up, so to speak, this is the kind of educator that worries me, who is so righteous in their cause that the necessity of splitting people up on the basis of race, making assumptions about the quality of someone's ability to think or to imagine or to empathize or to cognate on the basis of their race, and that you carry a burden because of your race, that you are imperfect because of your race, that people of other races need to be treated with kid gloves or assumed to be in a position of emotional fragility or something because of their on and on and on. Nothing about what she was talking about in any way, shape, or form to me says anti-racist in the way that those words actually mean what they're supposed to mean. If you're promoting racial stereotypes, if you're encouraging children to assess themselves and others on the basis of race, if you're encouraging an entire school system to put a lens of race around every educational element, you are not working to defeat racism. You are working to perpetuate it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's plain as day. But, granted that you are actually allowed to think for yourself and question whether the teacher is right. Because I really didn't get that. Let's see. Spudgun, Scribelight, didn't she make the race sex about sex for no reason with the only reading women of color who wrote about women of color on the authors? Oh. In a talk about anti-racism, what did reading books specifically about female authors have to do with anything? Ooh. You got me. Spudgun? You got me. I accept that one. And with that acceptance, I don't know if you can believe it.
Bingo.
What?
Of course!
We have a second bingo. Good job, Spud. Dang, I didn't think we'd get there. I was about to close things up. Good job. Well, kudos to Spudgun for that one. Double bingo. And honestly, I am, as much as I can be, all things considered, impressed that a relatively short TED event, clocking in at just under 9 minutes, whereas most TEDx's go about 15, has filled in as many squares as it has. And I think legitimately. But everything else, I think I'm going to have to leave uncircled because I've mulled it over and I haven't heard any arguments elsewise. And no anecdotes of any note that she gave us. She never said anything that made no sense at all, at least, insofar as, just talking to talk. Vital context. Like I say, she spoke in so many generalizations, it's hard to pinpoint whether she left out any vital context, if you know what I mean. Plays victim, nah. Attempt to coin new buzzword, buzz phrase, nah. Wage gap, no. Patriarchy. And again, simply turning it around and saying, well, she talked exclusively about women, therefore she's implying patriarchy in the reverse. Nah, I need to, either I need to conjoin those two squares together or just need to make it much more explicit is the rule. But anyway, everyone, I'm going to call it there. Thank you guys so much for joining me for this special edition of TED Excellence, or a TEDXtra, in the absence of a Lords of the Night tonight. Sorry to disappoint about that, but didn't feel appropriate doing a Lords of the Night again without Satsu, so we'll hold that off for Monday. And again, Monday on Satsu's channel at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, you can find Satsu and I, once again, fingers crossed, for Lords of the Night, where we'll talk about the news of the day, news stories you submit, what we've been up to on the internet, and then your questions and comments. You can find me again Sunday on this very channel for a Sunday stream triple feature. I have 3 relatively short videos all on the same subject, or relative same subject, about a new term, or maybe not a new term, but a rarely used term that may be the next stealth process of introducing different things into schools. And those phrases interchangeably are cultural competency and cultural proficiency. What do they mean in the real world practice of things? I don't know. Not for sure, but we'll find out on Sunday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern for the Sunday stream. But with that, everyone, thank you again so much for joining me. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things. Even though everyone is so well behaved, you have very, very little to do. Everyone who donated, thank you. Thank you so much for your generosity. I really do appreciate it. I hope everyone has a good rest of their weekend. I hope you all stay cool for those of you out in places where the heat is rising. And I hope you are all safe and well. If you are not well, please get well soon. And I'll see you on the next one. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.